The VC Project.
So we're here. We're at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, interviewing the one and only Mr. John Morris. How are you, sir?
Outstanding. Good to be with you.
Well, so we're excited. We have a great partnership with you guys. We have over the years, myself personally, for 13 years now, however long the museum
You helped build the technology into this museum. We've been open 11 years this last October, but certainly when you say 13 years, at least 2 years run up to putting this place together.
So I've gotten to see the many transitions of this building over the years, and thankfully have been a part of that. And I know that when you came on board, and then you and I went to lunch one day just to kind of touch base, and one of the things you mentioned to me was, you said, Jeremy, I want to make sure that the technology is not only top notch, but not just because to have the greatest technology, but to make it a tool for the people who come to the museum and a tool for learning. Right? Am I saying that correctly? Is
that's well said. The Peoria Riverfront Museum is unique in the nation as a museum of art, science, history, and achievement. These tools are just that. They're tools in the toolbox to help us do really what the mission of the museum is, which is to unleash the full talent and genius of every individual. So we believe, in fact, as I sit here in the galleries with you two, I looked out and saw these kindergartners coming by from one of the high poverty schools in Peoria Public Schools, giving these children access to some of the great art. We're surrounded by millions of dollars worth of art from Alice Walton's Art Bridges Foundation. It's remarkable. The tools we have here to help inspire our young people, our old people, our families, our visitors to the community, our young entrepreneurs are greatly aided with the technology that you all have brought to the table. So it's the technology helps enhance the tools that we have, and it's working. And I think we've got a model that is a model for the whole country in terms of museum inspiration.
So I know that, we've done some really cool digital signage displays and things of that nature. And, we help in the exhibits whenever possible. One of our most recent upgrades here was the giant screen theater. And I know we've talked a lot about that. This week, next week, we're going to be doing the press release this week as well. We were fortunate enough to win a recognition award for the installation of that.
Congratulations.
It's pretty awesome, and I'm excited about that. And, it's been a few weeks that it's been up and running now, but, those official ribbon cutting things always take a little while to get around. But I very much enjoy getting text messages from your staff when they fired up the Taylor Swift Eras movie, and many expletives about how awesome the sound system is. So that's music to my ears when I hear that. So
when the visitors come by, I think they thought beforehand, this is the best thing ever, because it was a phenomenal theater. It was a phenomenal experience. And with these enhancements, it's going to just take it to the next level. And I think that the guests are going to be extremely excited when they see this.
Well, the screen is about 72 feet wide, 54 feet tall. We discovered it's the largest film society screen in the country, if I'm correct on that. And it used to be the largest screen in Illinois until recently. I think there was an IMAX that was built.
Yeah, we had a moment there where the IMAX at Navy Pier closed about the start of the pandemic, and announced they weren't reopening. They were the only larger screen, commercial or otherwise, in the state of Illinois at the time. So we became, for that period of 3 or 4 years, the largest screen in Illinois. However, what we've learned since is when you really begin to analyze the tens of thousands of movie screens in the country, there's certain numbers of those that are dedicated to the art of film, to classic film, to documentaries, to film festivals, to, in our case, we do kids picks, and we do feature films, and we do special, like you mentioned, the Taylor Swift Eras film on the big screen, which is not your typical Avengers 19 film or something. It is film society content. Mark Elliott's Art of Film. Mark Elliott's a leading film scholar in New York. He comes in person 3 to 4 times a year. He curates on a weekly, Friday night, Sunday matinees, a weekly basis, the greatest films of all time, doing commentaries. So for a film society screen, we have the largest screen in the country, and we now, thanks to Pearl Technology, have the most advanced 21 speaker Dolby surround sound system, 36,000 lumen side by side laser phosphor light engines in those 3D capable
The color's
wall
unbelievable in
project.
that.
It's absolutely unbelievable. I I was out in the lobby of the giant screen theater, and I thought there was a live concert going on around the corner.
That's a soundproof room
I
too.
mean, and it's
Yeah.
a soundproof
Yeah.
room, and I walked around the corner, and the bass on those
Yeah.
subwoofers, which are what 8 feet across or something, it's really remarkable. So think about this from a museum standpoint. Uh, Film is a transferable, sort of replicatable art form, unlike, say, the Mona Lisa, right? There's only one Mona Lisa, which sadly just was attacked
I
by
saw
some
that.
tomato soup throwing anarchist or something. But the fact of the matter is, there's only one Mona Lisa. You can get an exact high res replica of the Mona Lisa, but to see the Mona Lisa, to see the texture, and see even in the Louvre in Paris, where who owns it, you cannot get that close because it's such a popular. But Van Gogh's Starry Night belongs to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, MoMA. There's only one Van Gogh Starry Night. I've seen it several times. To see the texture, to see the color, to see the size of it, to see the scale, to think about the great mind of Van Gogh, um, you have to go there. Film can be shown in an appropriate gallery wherever the film can go. And in the digital world we live today, Vertigo often ranked one of the if not the greatest, one of the greatest films of all time. Alfred Hitchcock's layered psychological thriller with Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. Vertigo just showed in the giant screen theater on a 70-foot wide screen with 36,000 lumen projectors and a brand new sound system. It is, in fact, possible that the greatest showing of that film ever, from when it came out in the 1950s, forever, was in our movie theater in Peoria, Illinois, because of the size of the screen and the technology that we have. That allows us to show the greatest works of art in the greatest way, better than New York can show them. And that's pretty remarkable to think about. So, I thank Pearl Technology. I thank your team for what you have done. It is you're generous with your time and talent, and you're a great partner. Great. I hope we're a good client as you are a vendor, but you're also more than that. You are a partner in bringing these experiences to a place in the world that can rightfully claim they may be the best.
To have a place like this too, to showcase those abilities, and to have a city that backs a museum and the culture and art that's brought in like we do here in Peoria, we're lucky, as a technology company, to have an outlet for that expertise. So it makes our job a lot more exciting and fun too, because it's not every day you get to come work at the museum. This is a fun, bright place to work. I love the week that we were down here getting that in. It's a great spot.
Yeah, I'm interested in the partnership that we have, and I love it. And you guys are a great partner because you always like to challenge me as well from a design perspective. If there's new ideas that you have, new exhibits that might be coming down, I love that I'm always the first phone call, from you to, hey, just call Jeremy. Let's see what we can do.
And the pep in your step, during that
Oh, yeah.
project, you were working till all hours of the night for a week straight.
Well, it's
back in the first
fun.
morning, but excited.
It's fun to do these kind of projects because it's not your average everyday cookie cutter conference room, which we do a lot of, right? I get to do something a little bit more fun, exercise my capabilities a little bit more from a design perspective. And the team likes a little bit of a different challenge when it comes to installation versus just hanging up a flat.
And so many more people get to enjoy it too. It's a constant turnover of people that get to go in there, experience it, talk to other people about it. It's something to get excited about.
Yeah, I'm very much a fan, and I love the theater as well. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about the theater, but the thing I love about it as well is it's not just the art of film, and even speaking about that, it was very nice having Mark Elliott stop by when we were tuning the sound system, watching John Wick the other night. And if I got kudos from him, I know it's a well done job. So, because he can be very critical of those things. So that was nice. But, it's more than that. It's using it for presentations. different of other events that you all have in here. I know you've done some local movies with George from George Shoeshine. You've done,
Sure.
different, even companies can come in and rent the facility to do any kind of presentation they want and have this beautiful 200 seat, I think it's about 200 seat, right? Auditorium space.
194, and we can squeeze a couple in on the side. So we say
Sure.
200 as well. Yeah, recently we had a curator from the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., who gave a presentation on this tremendous sculptor that he had done a lot of research in his life. And he said, I've never given a presentation anything like that. I mean, the screen that show the images of the sculpture that he was talking about, Canova was the name of the great Italian sculptor. Uh, it was impressive.
When you can see it several stories high, it's in super high resolution.
It's impressive.
Unbelievable.
And gentlemen, you know that we could show anything on the screen, but to show something that is of that quality, that lifts you up to a higher place, that's a higher use of that screen. And yes, corporate presentations. We did when I first arrived as CEO in 2017. We were showing sort of the latest Star Wars and the latest, and these were good, popular attractions. But I would ask then, where are we showing the film on Michelangelo, or where are we showing the film on George, the shoeshine guy, or showing the film that we just released, self-made, beautiful film on Preston Jackson's Bronzeville to Harlem: An American Story that we just premiered this week? Where would those films be shown, and where would there be a community that would support those things philanthropically? It's the museum, and I'm very grateful for the people in the community who have the ability to support us. Gary Pearl, your owner of the company, and your whole team. But Gary, I go back a long way in our community of him making a difference in places where he feels like the difference can be made. And the museum is one of those places that Sarah and he really have stepped up. Pearl Technology and all you do to help facilitate or grab hold of things that help us reach the public. It's pretty cool. And to see 18,000 school children and growing this year, we'll have 18,000 school children coming in and being able to see a presentation of the giant screen, or to walk by that LED wall that you all facilitated for the museum. It's remarkable.
How many schools is that?
We have 47 schools that we pay for entirely. And we have a rule that if we're going to raise the money to pay for your school, we want you to bring the whole school. So it's not just a grade level or one classroom. Okay. Now, we have many schools who get the money, PTO contributes, the school has it in the budget. They pay to come. Here's our fifth graders. They can come. We welcome those. But when we go out and raise the money, we want you all in, so that every student every year on a curriculum related basis. And then we also give the families a free pass to come back once with the kid can bring the whole family back.
I mean, that's one of the largest initiatives you all have been doing the past several years.
I call it the flagship initiative. It's changing the whole region inside and out to have this many students coming on this much regular basis. I sit on a bunch of boards and things in town. One of those groups called the CEO Council, and there are a lot of good, important leaders and who care about the community. But I asked 50 or 60 who were in attendance not too long ago, how many times have you been to the museum? Say ever, and somebody will say 3 times or 5 times or something, and one guy will say, well, I'm new to town, and a lady will say, I have yet to go, but terrific. You ask these kids from like a 90% poverty school in the city in Peoria, how many times they've been to the museum? They'll hold up 6 fingers. They'll say 7 times, 5 times. I mean, when the literacy of those who are most otherwise shut out of cultural experiences is higher, the frequency of seeing the folk art in the next room from the American Folk Art Museum, or seeing this summer's sharks exhibition. Let me say a word about sharks, by the way. Sharks, a fascinating subject. Every child in the world knows about sharks. There's Shark Week. There's sharks are in film. Sharks are ancient, really remarkable creatures capable of regenerating cells, rows of teeth. I mean, there's a lot sort of physiologically interesting about sharks. They are as ancient as the dinosaurs. This summer, we will bring from New York City's famous American Museum of Natural History. That's the movie Night at the Museum. That's that museum. We will bring the leading sharks exhibition in the world. That we were the first to sign for it, and it'll come from where it was in New York last summer. You'd have seen it in New York. This summer, you'll see it in Peoria.
You're talking about all these exhibits and the high end artwork here that's priceless. To most people, you show the cost of these exhibits. People would never be able to see this. How do you go about getting I can't say the word
Exhibitions, yeah, absolutely.
like that to come to town here, and
Or even this beautiful piece of art that's behind us.
Yeah.
Right?
how are you able to do all that?
Well, first of all, it takes a talented team. We have 30 full time people, and relationships is the name of the game. So we have relationships with other museums. We have relationships with foundations that connect us to museums. We have relationships with private collectors. Bill Heydrich, our guest curator here, has a tremendous number of connections in New York and otherwise. We purposefully targeted New York as a place we were going to build the bridge. Build a bridge to New York. So the American Folk Art Museum has works on display, courtesy of our friend Alice Walton and her foundation in Bentonville, Arkansas. The wealthiest woman in the United States is committed to getting smaller communities fine art from
that's the
America.
key. It's the smaller communities, and that's what makes
Smaller
it so
communities.
great for us, because otherwise, normally, it'd be much harder to get some of these, exhibits and some of these pieces.
Well, I think once they see some of these exhibits coming, they get excited and see, okay, what can we bring here next? And when you start to bring in these high level ones, it's not hard. It's not as hard to get the next level up.
Well, it was interesting. I had even one of our technicians who's more cultured than most of our technicians, right, came to me and said, "Hey, yeah, these museums, I heard about this thing they're doing with the art bridges and all this other stuff. It'd be really great if we started getting some of that down here." And I go, "They've been doing it for years, man. It's all in the hall. Come here." And I pulled a John Morris and I drug him in here.
Good.
And I showed him around. He's like, "Oh, I'm coming back this weekend to check this out." So,
Well, I think people are surprised. The other formula in this is that we have donors. We have something called the Visionary Society. People give $1,000 or $2,500, $5,000, $10,000 a year. When I got here, there were 99 of those people. It was a nice crowd of people that are giving at that level. Today we have 436, and 78 of those are giving 10 grand or more on an annual basis. This is a very big deal because what it does is allows us the resources we need to go get the big stuff. So Peoria is not trying to build a great sort of regional museum, a local museum. We are building a national museum, and we're doing it in Peoria. And when you have dance partners like the Whitney Museum, American Folk Art, American Museum of Natural History, the Museum of Modern Art, we are about to launch a new partnership with their film program at MoMA. I mean that there is not another museum in the United States doing as many big swinging for the fences collaborations for exhibitions and programs as the Peoria Riverfront Museum.
17 is the year that you started here, correct?
That's right.
So is there a story that you go back and look at where you can say that was that pivotal moment that took us to that next level that has allowed us to get to here?
Yeah, it all started with a focus on people and our young people. They're the future. And probably weeks into my tenure as the newly appointed CEO by a board of directors, by the way, is the best board in town. Todd Baker's our current chairman, but I've worked with Steve Jackson, Katie McCord Jenkins, and Sid Ruckriegel have all been chairman in my tenure here. That moment was standing, was sitting in my interview for the job, in which one of the search committee members, a veteran, longtime philanthropic leader, Sally Snyder, who was also former president of the Peoria Public Schools Board years ago, in an earlier life, very committed to young people. I went around the table. I said, well, you have been asking me questions about somebody you're interviewing for the job. Let me ask you, what would you do if you had the biggest possible idea? And Sally said, well, I'll tell you, if I could, I'd bring every single student in the Peoria schools in. Her vision was initially limited to the Peoria schools because that's what she knew. Well, even I thought, well, that's crazy. I mean, how are we going to get every single student every year? She said. Well, not a month or two later, I was at lunch with Polly Barton, whose late husband Glenn Barton, and he had passed within the previous year, was former chairman and CEO of Caterpillar, had left a foundation, pretty substantial foundation that Polly runs, Barton Family Foundation. And Polly was saying, you know, it was time to really try to make an impact, really in celebration of all the Glenn and she had stood for together. And I said, it's got this remarkable idea that Sally Snyder had brought up. What if we could bring every student in? And I had talked with Dr. Sharon Karat and said, if I could find the money, would you do this? And she said yes. So between those three, Sally Snyder, Sharon Karat, and Polly Barton funding it, we gave birth to what is arguably the greatest engagement program by a museum for students every single year. And now we've got 7 of the diocesan schools are in. We have rural schools from Roanoke. We have East Peoria across the river. It's expanding again. 47 schools, 46, 47 schools, I think, this year, fully paid for by generous donors that help every student come in for free every year.
So you have a little bit of a background in education as well. Where were you at before you came to the museum?
So I'm the first native son of Peoria that's been hired to run this or our predecessor institution, Lakeview Museum of Arts and Sciences. Since 1965 on, I'm the first one at Richwoods High School. I went away to the George Washington University for a couple of degrees in Washington, D.C., came back. I've worked in philanthropy and culture and education my entire career here. I was initially with Lakeview Museum.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, for 5 years.
Wow.
I was the development director at Lakeview. I created the first major gift society. I did some tremendous projects and exhibitions, hired then by WTVP, which was really an up and coming public media organization. We were the first to convert to digital broadcasting in the state of Illinois, the first.
I remember that.
During that transition was 2000, 2001 in that range. From there, I went to Eureka College, and I was the founding director of the Ronald W. Reagan Society, which is a nonpartisan educational foundation of sorts that raises money to help support scholarships and leadership development. And they have a museum and they have a speakers program and so forth. So I was there 9 years, almost a decade at Eureka College. Extraordinary to travel all over the country. I worked with everybody from Justice Sandra Day O'Connor to Mikhail Gorbachev, the former leader of the Soviet Union, with whom Ronald Reagan negotiated the first INF treaties to eliminate an entire class of nuclear weapons, and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, and 100 others in between all those. So when the board approached me here, I'm a native son of Peoria. I never left, even working for Eureka. It's just 20 miles down the road, traveling the country. But I thought, my goodness, how about a mission to unleash the full talent and genius of every individual? How about a place that everything we do is really singular in its focus to make us better, to help us be better as to who we can be, self-actualize. And so that's my background. That's how I came to this place, Jeremy.
I'm not going to ask for the best or anything like that, but with all your years and the experience in the museum, a piece or a collection that just stands out to you, maybe because of the challenge that was involved in getting it. Again, it can be from any point in time and not the best, but just one that kind of sticks out.
Well, one that sticks out immediately is when I got here, I asked, what is the one thing we can do better than anyone else in the world in terms of collecting and exhibiting? And while we are a multidisciplinary museum unlike any other, there was one particular kind of object that we could collect and pretty quickly ramp up to be the best museum of that collection, and it is duck decoys. So up and down the Illinois River Valley for arguably millennia, the Native Americans had invented a technology to fool the birds to come closer. They'd use their bows and arrows. They'd get dinner for the family. And so the European immigrants came in. None of them in the old country could hunt. I mean, that was only accessible to nobility if you're from Europe and you're immigrated to the United States. So here in this land of opportunity and freedom that they've immigrated into, many of them for religious freedom purposes, the idea of hunting the land had a dual concept. One, you could get food for your families, It wasn't just sport early on. It was, getting food for your family. Millions of waterfowl fly up and down the Illinois River Valley and other flyways in the United States. But it was here in this Illinois River Valley that the greatest carvers of those early European immigrants started carving these beautiful decoys. None of them thought they were art. They thought, I'm just carving a better decoy than Charlie Purdue from Henry and Charlie Shane Hyder Sr. From Peoria. So these carvers are right here. Well, now these things are worth millions of dollars. So we have in the museum on loan from private collectors or acquired through our collections acquisitions process. We have established the Center for American Decoys, and we have millions of dollars of the finest decoys that have ever been carved in American history.
Was that market already like that, or did the start of that kind of raise the value of that?
No, the market was already that way. I mean, you have people like David Rockefeller who were collecting decoys. Colonial Williamsburg has decoys in its collection. They are. Some scholars believe that there are only two forms of art that were actually invented in what we now know as America: jazz and waterfowl decoys. And so, whether scholars can argue that point, but the idea that we did not take, like, when you look at bronze casting of sculpture, we did not invent. That's an ancient technology that has been brought into art making. You have people in America making bronze sculptures today, but we didn't invent it. We didn't invent silk screening, and we didn't invent print making. We did not invent oil painting or watercolors, but we invented this weird hybrid of painting and sculpting for practical purposes in the form of waterfowl decoys. And so we're sitting here in the gallery one of the museum right now with you two, but pretty remarkable. Just around the corner, we've got this Center for American Decoys, and we've already raised almost $1.5 million to support the center. In the first several years, we produced the greatest documentary ever produced on the subject. We produced one of the finest books to ever be produced. We assembled in 2019 240 of the greatest decoys from the East Coast and what they call the Mississippi Flyway here in the Illinois River Mississippi Flyway, in what every decoy collector there is calls the greatest decoy exhibition ever mounted by a museum. So, and we're just getting warmed up.
And when you say multidisciplinary museum, I mean, you guys really mean it.
We really mean it.
It is it's unreal.
We haven't even talked about the planetarium.
There's
so many cool places in this museum.
And I was going to touch on that, but I don't want to go there yet because I want you to talk a little bit about the collection of the museum itself, the museum and what you all own. Because I know that you had Gallery 1 and 2 a couple of years ago set up with just a very small fraction of what the museum owns. Now, you guys bring in all these exhibits like Jaws and the stuff with Walton and all this other stuff too, but I was amazed when I found out how much stuff you have, right?
It's pretty remarkable. In 1965, we opened what is now the Peoria Park District headquarters building. We opened that as Lakeview Center of Arts and Sciences. It was a group of people that came together locally and said, we ought to have a building where these disparate, multidisciplinary groups can come together and inspire each other and be inspired by each other. And at that point, there were some collections that were really valuable. There was a woman who had married the son of the Prime Minister of France. This is after she was married to an heir of the Dole pineapple fortune. True story. And the marriage had ended in France, and she decided to move back to the United States and settle in Peoria, Illinois. So she lived on the West Bluff in a beautiful old mansion in Peoria. Her name was Clemenceau, Madame Clemenceau. They called her. Clemenceau was the former prime minister during World War I. And so she had in her things this silver basket by Delamery, who's one of the most famous silver makers in history. She had a portrait, beautiful portrait she had painted over. So she had French furniture, all of these things. When she died, more than 250 objects from her collection came to this little Lakeview Museum. It was then the center, Lakeview Center of Arts and Sciences. So right now we have insects in the galleries. That insect collection was given to us early on in the life of Lakeview Museum. And so we've got thousands, I think estimated 4,000 to 5,000 different beautiful rare insects.
And those are owned by the museum.
Owned by the museum's permanent collection. So in total, we believe we have about 18,000 objects, from paintings and works on paper and prints, sculptures,
Years of rotation.
decoys. Yeah, I mean, we own one Rodin. We own a Frank Lloyd Wright chair given to us by the Swardansky family from the Little House here. The rest of that collection, by the way, is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York on display at the Met. We have the beautiful chair, Frank Lloyd Wright chair. The list goes on and on.
And the amethyst.
Well, and then what's happening in recent years, and Bill Conger, our chief curator, Renee Kerrigan, curator of science, Zach Zetterberg, curator of art, Center for American Decoys, Everly Davis, now our assistant curator. Our curatorial team has really worked hard to identify objects that are first, best, or only. We have this rule. We don't want to do anything that's not first, best, or only in the world. It's not just best in Peoria. We want it to be the best. So one of the things we found with the help of Bill Heydrich, our guest curator I mentioned earlier, and Doug and Diane Oberhelman, who are familiar names, philanthropist, Doug, former chairman of Caterpillar, and Diane, very successful business leader here. Those three, along with members of our board, Steve Jackson, the chairman, and others, stepped forward to buy one of the largest amethyst specimens in the world on public display. Now, it's a 10-foot tall, 1,900-pound purple quartz crystal amethyst.
It's unbelievable.
Mined in Uruguay.
It's just right over here, isn't it?
It's right around the corner.
Right.
People come and say, who owns that? We own that. That is Peoria. So we've just recently acquired some absolutely stunning cast glass busts from Nicholas Africano, an internationally famous sculptor, painter, who actually has a studio in Normal, Illinois. Talk about flying below the radar. Nobody really even knows that he's there. And Nicholas Africano's in 40 major art museum collections, including the Met and MoMA and San Francisco Museum, de Young Museum, many others. We now own two beautiful sculptures, just acquired thanks to the generosity of donors. And then we do things that are really connected to the community that help raise the visibility and pride in the community. For example, recently, through the generosity of Darlene Violet, we commissioned the first portrait of Richard Pryor that the museum's ever commissioned. Jonathan Romaine, a local artist with the national footprint. He and his wife, Nikki, have Art Inc. right down the road here, but we commissioned Jonathan to do a stunning portrait of our own Richard Pryor, native son of Peoria and most famous entertainer to come out of Peoria. So, there's talk about multidisciplinary. We're doing a lot of different things for a lot of different constituencies, but all for one reason: unleash the full talent and genius in everybody. Use art, science, history, and achievement to do it.
You can be inspired at any age. And we're not talking about just the kids that come in. It's any age, any group, anyone at any time. A lot of people don't find their calling till they're 40, 50 years old sometimes, right? It's very interesting. He touched on it a little bit, Pat did, but outside of the exhibits and the art and the giant screen theater, we've got the planetarium as well, which is very cool and recently upgraded technology-wise as well. I know you're doing laser light shows to popular musicians. You're doing, that's the one thing my kids always want to go to whenever they come to the museum, because they always want to see whatever the show of the day is that we can squeeze in. That's one of the most, to me, one of the coolest parts of this museum as well.
Pat, thanks, Jeremy. Pat, you mentioned the planetarium earlier. What do you like about the planetarium?
I've always been enthralled with astronomy and things like that, and to have an outlet to where you can go get an immersive experience. It truly is immersive, and it started for me when I was probably 8 or 9 years old at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. They had one there, and I had my first experience there. And, I hadn't really been back until I was in Peoria here a couple of years ago, and my kids love it too. And then when you have something that you share with your kids, it's an awesome experience, and it's a great way to spend time here.
It's interesting you say share with your kids, because that's exactly what we have found. Our surveys have found that the number one thing people love about the museum is its meaningful time with family and friends. Memories being created, and you mentioned that as well with the kids going. the planetarium here is a 40-foot dome planetarium which uses something called the Digistar 7 system. It's the equivalent of the iPhone 15 Pro of planetarium software and hardware systems. It is, for the moment, we can say proudly that we have the highest caliber, state of the art system. But it's not just the technology, it's the people like Renee Kerrigan and Nick Ray. When you go in there and they fly you through the rings of Saturn, or they show you the latest James Webb telescope images that are instantly downloaded to our system on any given day. You can go in there today. If there's anything new from the James Webb, we've got it. So, think about what what advantages Peoria and the region, we find increasingly people from Springfield and Champaign and Quad Cities and the whole region, the advantage that we have because of what we're bringing into this facility. That's really what we're after, is to if you're a person that aspires, as you did when you were in Nebraska. Were you born in Nebraska?
Born in Omaha, yeah.
That's a great place to be from.
It's awesome.
Nebraska is a solid place, and my brother and sister-in-law both went to Creighton.
Yep.
And as did your family member.
I did as well, yeah.
And you did as well, yeah. Just terrific people come from Nebraska. My grandfather spent time in Nebraska. In any case, imagine Peoria being a place where absolutely the state of the art films and planetarium shows and speakers and programs and exhibitions are accessible to us. That's where we're headed. That's where we're rapidly approaching the ability to bring in absolutely the biggest thing. We will not have an NFL team in Peoria. It's just not, the demographics are not there.
We've got our minor league baseball, though.
We have minor league but truthfully, we won't have an MLB team or an NFL team. But we can have the NFL equivalent of a museum, and we can do it without an exorbitant, impossible amount of investment. Now, it's taking more investment. It's taking outside philanthropists, taking all of us locking together and say, here's 1,000, I'll join the visionary side. But it's happening. I mean, you can feel it happening. I have people coming from upstate Illinois, which is, I call them upstate because we were here first. DuSable lived in Peoria before he founded the city of Chicago. So you can go to these world-class museums, and they have them for sure. But you cannot see Bronzeville to Harlem, an American story. It is here. Preston Jackson's 25 years in the making, a masterpiece. You can't see a Center for American Decoys. You cannot. Did you know that no Chicago museum has a film society screen, a giant screen theater that can show flat screen films? None.
Huh, I didn't know that.
You can go to the Museum of Science and Industry. They have got an OmniMax, which is the dome screen. Art Institute of Chicago, you cannot see a giant screen theater. You can't see one at Adler. You cannot see one at the Field Museum. You can't. Now, they have world-class attributes, but to come and watch a great film with a Pearl Technology outfitted 21 speaker system, 36,000 lumen projector, you got to come to Peoria.
As a member of the Visionary Society or a member of the museum, you also have access to some of those world-class museums in Chicago and New York, which is
1,300 other museums around the country.
It's pretty nice. I was looking at the list the other day because we were thinking about taking the kids up to Chicago, and the list is very extensive as to where we could go.
Taking it for granted is the wrong word, but when you come down here as often as we do, you don't realize just how fortunate we are for a city of this size to have this is remarkable. And it's, we usually end the podcast by saying, hey, what's next? But you've crafted that over the last however long we've been here. And that vision is clear. And it's awesome to see the footsteps in motion.
Yeah.
So, would you like a what's next?
We would.
I thought I already got that. Give it to us.
I'll give you what's next. So America is turning 250 years old in 2026. Right, July 4th, we consider our birthday, the Declaration of Independence, our independence from Great Britain. So warming up to that and leading up to that, America will be having a number of different celebrations. Different cities in different ways will be celebrating the the spirit of America, the bumps and bruises, the ups and downs, the opportunity, the freedom, and the Peoria Riverfront Museum and our board of directors is going to take a lead role as a museum telling the varied stories from our perspective as 10,000 years of Native American history, 350 years of the French settlers, the growth, the great migration, which brought us such racial diversity in our community, that the Industrial Revolution manifesting itself in Caterpillar's presence here, the great inventions that we're connected to, and entertainment and so forth. We believe that we will pull off maybe the greatest single uh, exhibition on the semi quincentennial. It's a fancy way of saying half of 500 or 250. We're just calling it America 250. We're going to pull off the greatest America 250 exhibition in the country. And our board is behind it. Our donors are behind it. And I think get ready, because it's going to it's going to give us a chance to sort of sing at a national level.
That's amazing.
Excellent. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really loved having you on. It's great to have such a partnership with the museum, and we're very appreciative of that as well. So thank you again, sir.
For all you do for the city, too. We are truly lucky to have somebody as passionate as you spearheading all this. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Jeremy.